So today I'm just doing a live build. I decided to do a video so I can take you through the whole build process of how I put a PC together and just go through it live and just see what happens. And throughout the build, hopefully I can show you a few tips and tricks along the way. So first thing I always like to start off with is the motherboard. Opening the box, you see we always get a nice set of new SATA cables, and then you have the motherboard in an anti-static bag. Now, typically you should be using anti-static wrist straps, but in my experience of building so many PCs, I've never had an issue where there's been a static discharge. Before you do start building, it's probably wise just to touch something metal, just to discharge your fingers, just in case. And then opening up the anti-static bag, taking the motherboard out, just give the motherboard a quick check. I always like to have the ports on the left here so I can get an idea of where everything's going to go. And then I will open up all of the slots for the RAM sticks, pull up this lever for the CPU, and the CPU that I'm going to be using is a Ryzen 3600. It's a very good processor, 6 cores, 12 threads, and I believe it's running at 3.6 gigahertz and is good for overclocking. So this was the go-to processor in 2019, 2020, and it still holds up very much today. And for some reason, it comes with a 5000 series sticker, so that's very interesting. Anyway, just taking this out the box, it has some gunk on it, so I'll clean that off in a minute. When you do get the processor, just check the pins, just make sure they all look okay. And whatever you do, do not drop the processor. In fact, actually, I've never checked this processor before, but I actually have a few bent pins. I don't know if you can see that, but you can see that in the light. There's some few bent pins on the sides there. So I think I sorted out the pin damage on this and I bent all the pins straight. So I'm going to try it out, and it's worth testing this motherboard out outside the case. So yeah, you need to do is you just take your motherboard and you need to line it up with the notch on the motherboard. So you have a small notch up on the top right corner there, and you need to then line that up with a notch that is indicated on the CPU, which is here. And with that, once you've got those two lined up, you just want to place the CPU in, and it should just drop in. The next thing you want to grab is your RAM. In this case, I decided to use Fury RAM. So yeah, just open up the case. And in this instance, I'm just going to be using the black slots. The black slots indicate one of the channels. The grey slots indicates the second channel. And just make sure you've got the groove lined up with the PC. So I'm just going to line that up this way. And you just want to press the RAM sticks in with even pressure on either side. And once you've got one in, you know which orientation they need to go in. That's a 16 gigabyte kit at 3200 megahertz. Next thing after getting the CPU and the RAM sticks installed is probably I'm going to go and get my power supply. So Game Max 600 watt semi-modular power supply. So opening this up, seems pretty nice in here. You get your modular cables, which is very nice indeed. The cable ties and a couple of screws, and the power supply itself. So get it out. Now, for whatever reason, and I have no idea, they decided to stop shipping power supplies with power cables. I don't know why. They should come with power cables. You can't turn your PC on if you ain't got a power cable. So I know it's probably a cost-cutting measure, but I think it's just a bit too cheap in my opinion. So just taking this out, and yeah, I mean it looks pretty decent. I'm quite happy with that. And I'm just going to get these bundles of wire undone. So I've got my CPU connector there. I've got two SATAs and my 24 pin here. There's a bit of dirt on it, but anyway, I'm just going to put this here. And you just basically on your bench test to make sure that you at least get a post. So this is a Ryzen 3600. It's not the 600 3600G. So there's no integrated graphics. So in this instance, I'm going to have to use a graphics card, a GT 710 or a rubbish graphics card sitting around. This is perfect for just doing some like bench testing, just to make sure you're getting a video output. And actually in this instance, I'm going to be breaking one of my SATA cables out. Plug that in. And what I want to do is I want to see if I can at least boot to Windows. Always have a spare drive sitting around with Windows installed already. And I'll just plug this in. And that's about it. I'm not going to put a cooler on the CPU because I don't even know if that's going to work. I'm just going to plug in my HDMI cable. Let's see what happens. You can use a trusty screwdriver like this. And what I'll do is I'm just going to touch the pins to turn this on. So I think it's probably these two here, which is GPU is powering up, power supply is on, CPU is getting warmish, it's hot to the touch, and I have posts. So that is very good news indeed. And that CPU is hot, so we need to turn it off now. So I'm just going to add a bit of thermal paste to this. I like to use my Arctic Cooling MX4 thermal paste. Put a splodge there on. And I'm just going to mount my cooler. So you're going to have your exhaust fan blowing this way. Your intake fans are here, your exhaust fans are here. So you want to make sure that this fan is on this side, putting air through and pushing air out onto the other side. So apparently mounting this is just a case of, the other thing you want to think about is, well, I've got it in this orientation and I probably have them looping around again this side. So yeah, this mechanism is a real pain to get on. There we go. Bloody hell, that was hard. I feel really uncomfortable when I do that because I really feel like I'm going to break something. So just put that back on the box. And then I'm just going to route my wires around the mounting mechanism again. I'm going to go around another time. Most probably, I think I'm going to have my LED pins are down here. So I'm going to have this, I suppose, routed here. That's going to be connected there. And then this fan connector needs to be connected to the CPU fan, which is up here. That is really nice cable management, I have to say so myself. So actually I'm just going to plug in everything again and just make sure it all works okay. There you go, boot into Windows. Perfect. You can see that okay, but it's in. There you go, Windows screen. I know, sorry, I haven't got the right setup for that, but we are in Windows. So it is working okay. Obviously, I need to do a lot more testing to make sure that CPU is okay. And I'm just going to do a hard drive check to make sure the hard drive isn't dead or dodgy. So let's have a look at that quickly. I like to use, what is it called? Crystal Disk Info. So I'm just going to load that up and I'm just going to get it to check all my hard disks for me. So it's telling me that both my hard disks are good, no problems there, and the hard drive, the 2 TB hard drive, is okay. And you basically got to take the whole computer apart again. But it's well worth doing this so you know it is working before you put the whole thing together, especially when you don't have a lot of time to return some of these items. And also in terms of troubleshooting, this saves a whole load of time. And I think my cable management so far has been pretty good. Well, I know I've only done the fan and the LEDs. And let's get the case out. So, power supply, put that to one side. Now, apparently this case has fan controllers in there. So I'm sure we'll be having a look at that in a minute. Just open up the side panel. So usual, it has thumb screws at the back. It's normally on the side, but yeah, maybe I guess this just slides out, I guess. Oh, interesting. It's on a metal backing. I'm just going to take the back panel off because I don't want that to get scratched. It feels very thin. It does not feel as sturdy as Player One cases that I've used before. Their cases actually feel pretty nice. This feels very, very thin and light, but you get 4 fans with this case, which is quite nice. And there should be a fan controller on the back, so let's just have a look at that. Yeah, there you go. There's a nice little fan controller there. Ah, I see. So this is just a looping of fans together for their LEDs. So they're not actually in use, any of them. That's a bit weird. Okay, so I'm just going to take all of this out. And what have I got here? Oh, SATA connector. That's going to be useful. And what is going on here? Oh, these are going to the fans. Yeah. And this is a fan header. This is SATA connector. I'm just going to take that off for power. And I guess that is used for connecting to the motherboard. So it will run all the fans. So first thing I like to do, I like to start from the bottom up, and the first thing I'm going to install is my hard drives. Well, hard drive should I say, because in this build I'm only installing one. You just undo the 2 screws on the bottom. Of course, this is made in China. Everything is made in China, and it's all probably from the same manufacturing site, the same place, just with a different badge on the front. That's all it is, guarantee you. Especially when it's MSI. I don't know why MSI is going up making cases these days. It doesn't make any sense to me when they originally make motherboards and things like that, and graphics cards, and now they're making PC cases. I don't know, but I guarantee you it wasn't MSI that made this case. It was probably a Chinese manufacturer that makes millions of these cases a year, and they're probably all exactly the same, but it's just got a different badge on the front. So there are some case manufacturers that are good, like NZXT. I'm pretty sure they make and design their own cases. There are a lot of good case manufacturers, but when it comes to like budget options, there are not that many out there. I think I'm supposed to be using these crappy yellow screws for this. Ah, I see. So, for whatever reason, I'm using these two yellow screws on this side. I have no idea why. I guess they're trying to come up with some kind of sliding mechanism, so you can easily take these two off and slide it out. But then there's three screws on this side, so what's the point? You still have to undo these screws to be able to slide it out. So what's the point in that? That is a very stupid design choice in my opinion. Complete waste of time. Just put some holes on the other side and be done with it. Instead of confusing me with these little yellow screws for whatever reason. Yeah, I mean, these slidey screws on this side, these screws on this side are going to be blocked by the power supplier anyway. So we're going to have to take the whole thing out anyway to be able to access it. So I don't have an SSD per se, I have an M.2, so this is the only drive that I'm going to be installing, and you just got to make sure you slide it into the slots. So next thing is figuring out the power supply. So you want the fan facing down, and the other thing you want to figure out is what power connectors do you need. So let me just get this case out of the way. So figure out what you need. So I know I definitely need this. I know I need at least two SATA ports. One for the LEDs and the fans, another one for the hard drive. I need my CPU fans. And I think the only one other thing that I'm probably going to need, I'll just open this up. I don't think I'm going to need any Molex, although I may live to regret that decision. I'm not going to need any more SATA wires. I think all I'm going to need is a PC. So let's get that connected up. And it should be a pretty minimal, clean build with just using this. So I guess this is the connector end. Yes, it is. And I want to put in the PCI Express slot. And that's all I need. Right, so now I'm just going to clear this spider webs of crap in the way. I hope I don't damage that LED thing. It looks very fragile. Anyway, let's get this in. So this case actually was not compatible with any power supplies whatsoever when I went on ccl.com. Quite a pretty good website for ordering parts. They're very competitive and they have very fast delivery, so I would highly recommend them. And this video is not sponsored by them whatsoever, but it'd be great if it was. Right, so flipping the case over, I've got my hard drive and my power supply now installed. I'm just showing you what that looks like. I think that looks rather good. Don't you think? Anyway, let's get on with installing the motherboard. So before I get on doing that, so I just want to install my M.2 before I go any further. And all that packaging just for this tiny little thing here. And that sticker looks absolutely crap in there. I don't know what you think, but I just look at that. I'd prefer if there was nothing on there whatsoever, rather than just sticking this rubbish looking sticker on the top of it. It's not even on the right way. I'm just going to peel this off. It just looks garbage on there. There we go. That looks so much better. So much better. Anyway, now that garbage sticker is gone, just going to take my trusty screwdriver and just undo this screw here. Pop this in. Till you get a nice little click. And then just screw it in place. Now that's in. That's pretty much everything you need, except before you put this in, do not forget the back IO shield. Because the last thing you want is to finish your build and you've forgotten the bloody IO shield. Put that in. Because you don't want to take the motherboard out again. And I've made that mistake many times and regretted it every time. So just make sure it's in the right orientation. You can usually tell because you always have the audio ports on the bottom. So if you've got that on the bottom, just line that up and push it in, avoiding all the wires that you've got in the way. The other thing you want to check is just inspect the case, because you want to make sure that the fans are in the right orientation. Some manufacturers have been known to actually install the fans the wrong way round, so you need to make sure that they're in the right orientation. How do you do that? You want to make sure that the motor and the mount for the fans is got these support beams on the back. So that means it's blowing air in this way, and likewise same on the back, but it's all in the right orientation. So the next thing I'm going to do is just get some of this wiring out the way. The next thing you want to do, and it's usually ignored in most videos, but you need to make sure that your standoffs are in the right place, because if they're not, they're going to touch the back of the motherboards and give you a nice short on your motherboard. So make sure that you have all the standoffs you need. So I need another 2 on these 2 holes here. And then you want to then just place your motherboard in. Just make sure you've got the right clearance and just kind of mate it up with your IO shield. The IO shield is a bit of a bugger, but you want to make sure that everything is mated in there nicely. I usually like to check the back before I screw anything in, because so just grab a screw, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to place it along the bottom. I'm just going to put one there that you usually have at the back of the case, which is usually here. You usually have this hole here. So if you don't have these holes available, if your motherboard is loose, you can squeeze your connector up here, and then you can route it round onto the other side. Now I saw Linus Tech Tips video where he did a budget build and it didn't have these 2 slots on the top. He just ran the power cable from down here all the way up here. I don't think that's a very good idea. The reason for that is you're going to have that power cable. You do have gaps here, but it's going to be blocked when you're trying to take in and out your graphics card or any other cards that you may have in here. It's just not clean. I like to minimize the amount of wires I have here to the absolute maximum that I can get away with, and it's just not very clean at all. So just make sure that you try and keep your build as clean as you can. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run my cables. So I'm going to find my CPU power cable, wherever that's gone. This is the first thing I usually like to plug in, because this is usually the one that is a pain in the backside to try and plug in. So let's get that in now. And I've got this fan header here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap it around the fan itself and hope that it's long enough still to reach the fan header, which it is not. Is wrap it out round the other way around, and I think I'm just gonna tie it down here. All of these cables up here are not going through the ideal hole that I'd like them to be run through, so I'm going to pull all of these out this hole here, and instead I'm going to be running them through this top hole so they're completely out of the way. I'll get these ones plugged in first. I usually sometimes like to plug this in while the motherboard's out. I didn't do that in this case, but you can have the motherboard still unscrewed and you can then start plugging these in. It makes it a hell of a lot easier, but in this case I didn't do that. So let's just get that in the back here. Let's turn it back around. So I'm going to be back in a minute, because I think at this point it probably makes more sense to change the camera angle. So just 1 minute. Okay, so now we've got the motherboard in place. Time to run these cables. So you have your reset switch, power LED, HDD LED, and so on. And the thing you want to use here is your motherboard manual. I think I have, what's this? That is HD audio, usually written on there. And I have USB. So I'm going to follow the same route for these two. Shove it down here somewhere. Just make sure you've got the ground the right way around. You just want to connect that in there. That's not great, is it? There we go. I think that's in. It's not the most secure connection, but if you normally get a port that is on its own, and you've got 3 other ports that are here, these ports are run by one driver and this one will be run by a different one. This port would run slower than these other 3, and these 3 will be running at 6 gigabytes per second. This one is probably running at a slower rate, maybe 3, maybe less. So you definitely want to stick to these 3 ports here. So I think I'm going to go with the bottom one. A huge deal. Right, graphics card. I'm using Quick 380. So this is an RX 6600 XT, 8 gigabytes, DDR6 I believe, RDNA 2. Yeah, GDDR6, GDDR6. very, very good value graphics cards. I would highly recommend anyone getting this GPU. It's a very, very, very good card. I've been super happy with its performance. And it's not a power hog like some of the other cards. It only has one 8-pin connector. And you just basically and this is my stash of other screws. This is so useful because when I do need an assortment of screws, I always have a spare. In fact, I might use my big boy screwdriver for this. Now, if that isn't perfection, I'm not sure what is. That is absolutely perfect. Really pleased with my wiring so far, but it is still a rat's nest on the back here. So now I've made a holder for holding these sticks, which is basically an audio equalizer. So it will show up an LED light whenever it detects sound, and I'm going to mount this on top of the GPU. So this is just going to slot in like this, hopefully. So I think that should work pretty well, and I think that's going to look really good once that's all wired up. So let's get on to doing that now. I think the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to glue these two in, and then I'm going to make sure that it's properly mounted in there. So let's go ahead and glue these in now.